So good morning, everyone. Before we start my talk, how many of you here like mathematics? Okay, don't like mathematics, just show of hands. Okay. This is actually the second talk that is going to have a good number, no amount of mathematics. So I'm kind of sorry about it, but cool. And so yeah, this talk is going to be about building real-time applications with Ember. Uh, and I'm Siva. So I work as a front-end developer in Zoho, and you can reach out to me in these things. So yeah, sorry. What is a real-time application? It's basically anything where, time is paramount. You can't just say, I'll send my response whenever I want. It is somewhere where your time is very, very critical. It's something like this, basically. So imagine the kind of controls they should have, the kind of avionics and the kind of code that has to be written for all this. So here's another example. So this is basically US Navy's Blue Angels flight demonstration team. I'm kind of a flight freak, so how do you become the Blue Angels? You write real-time applications. Okay, say you go to Twitter or Facebook. Okay, what happens? Initially, when you just do facebook.com enter, you send a request to their servers, right? And then the server sends you a response. So they probably just send you the news feed and all that. But later, say you have notifications, messages and all that. How does all that get synced? There has to be some kind of a mechanism, right? So it's all basically a real-time application. Another example is probably chat applications, teleconferencing, Skype, for example. Uh, so there are different ways of doing this. One is polling. So polling is very trivial technique where you just keep sending requests every n seconds, and the server just sends you a response. And depending on the response, you decide what you want to do. Another thing is long polling. So here what happens is when the server receives a request, it doesn't immediately send you a response. It rather waits till there is some change and then it pushes the response. The problem with this is like your server just holds that connection, right? So if there are multiple clients connected, your server is going to be occupied. So that is one issue there. And server sent events is another kind of modern thing. I'm not actually going to talk much about it. And the other two are WebRTC and WebSockets. So WebSockets is what this entire presentation is about. So WebSockets is where you have multiple clients and you have a small centralized server. So what happens is the server can push messages to all your clients and the client can communicate with the server alone. And WebRTC, it lets you, it lets the peers to communicate with the other peers. It can also do server to clients. WebRTC you usually use for video chat and all that. It actually allows as little latency as possible. But this entire talk is going to be about WebSockets, so we'll stick to that for now. So the dangerous thing about this presentation is I'm going to do live coding. So this is actually the first time I'm going to try out live coding, so we'll see how it goes. When I actually submitted this proposal, I was like, yeah, what could go wrong? I was very confident. And till about Thursday night, I was actually like this. And then Thursday night, I had another idea. I was like, okay, this can be done, but I actually submitted a proposal saying this is what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something different. If it works out, it'll be nice, but yeah, I live dangerously. Yeah. Okay, so I live dangerously, but I'm not going to do npm install now and spend the next 10 minutes of my talk. So I actually bootstrapped the application already. So I've done Ember install this thing. So this is basically a Ember add-on where it lets you use WebSockets in your Ember application. So let's just jump right into the code. I'll actually take this out. Am I audible? Wait, reduce the height. So how many of you here have used Octane or written Ember Octane code till now? So even if you don't learn anything about real-time applications, you'll probably learn about Ember Octane from this talk. So this is actually the bootstrapped application. So I just have a service, and there is also a environment file. So I'm going to be using something called Socket.io for this talk. So Socket.io is another library. So what it does is, like, if the browser supports WebSockets, it uses WebSockets, and if the browser doesn't support WebSocket, it falls back to polling. So I also have a simple node server that's just, sending events and handling events. So if you have to use WebSockets, you just need to add this to your environment config. And I just added a socket handler that just, creates a socket connection, and it just has this. So while writing socket code like this, what you're supposed to do is, like, you get events basically. So it's fully event driven. So what I'm doing is, if there is a handshake success event, I'm asking this code to run this greet method, and greet just logs whatever is sent. And in my application controller, I've just done this dot emit of handshake, and I'm just sending hello. And in the server side, I've just done on handshake, I'm just emitting handshake success with the same params. So whatever I got, I'm just sending it back. Basically, this entire server, what it does is, like, for whatever event comes, like, it just sends back whatever param it receives. So let's try and run this. So you can see that hello is getting logged. Is it visible? Yeah. So yeah, this is a simple application for now. But yeah, this talk is going to be like, I'm going to try and make something interactive. So what I'm going to do is, I've actually created a component called playground for now. Okay, so I'm going to use HTML canvas. Has anybody played with HTML canvas till now? Has anybody used it? Okay, so canvas is actually a really cool thing. It lets you do a lot of things. Recently, there was actually a very popular tweet where one person, he lets you upload your photos to the site basically, and they paint the image to the canvas, and you can do all sorts of adding filters, adding special effects, and all that to photos. So yeah, that's about canvas. And if you notice this, you'll see that in Ember classic apps, you'll just do this, right? But Octane actually recommends you to be explicit, so you can be as explicit as possible. So what it means is, this width is actually a property of this component itself. Okay, so let's go to the application HTTPS, and I just get rid of this. So yeah, the canvas element is here. It's currently empty, but it's on the screen. So let's do something with this. Now, the thing about Ember Octane components, Glimmer components, is that normally in your normal Ember components, you'll have a lot of hooks, right? You'll have init, you'll have did insert element, did render, and all that. So here you have only two hooks. One is init, and the other is will destroy. So I want to do something with this canvas element. Okay. So normally in your classic apps, you'll just do this dot element, right? That thing doesn't actually exist in these components. So you need to use something called Ember render modifiers. So what I'm going to do is, on did insert, I'm just going to call this dot initialize something. And here I'm just going to initialize that thing. So for now, let me just log the element. So the thing about this did insert modifier is that it actually sends you the element as an argument. You get it here. And if you notice, you will see that if this was a classic application, you will just do this dot element, and you'll get this full thing. And then you'll do this dot element dot query selector of canvas, right? But here, since the hook is being used on the canvas element itself, what you get here will actually be the canvas. So if you go and see the log, you'll see that the canvas is getting logged. Now let's try and draw a circle here. So the canvas elements actually have something called context. So we are going to draw something in 2D. So we'll just use that for now. And we'll just say context dot arc of this dot width by 2 and this dot height by 2. Let's also have a radius somewhere. I'm putting it outside the component because I'm going to use this in a lot of places. So what this does is it just draws an arc from 0 to 2 into math.py, which is basically 360 degrees. And you're supposed to actually stroke this thing. So now if you see, it will say this is undefined. The thing with so when you want to access this, you're supposed to declare this as an action. So now you should be able to see the thing. So this is another thing that might be different from classic Ember components. You need to use actions to access this. So yeah, so we have a circle here. Let's try and animate this. So what we can do is we can probably just use a clear set interval, and I can say this dot repaint rocks dot paint of this, and I'm going to run this for every 20 milliseconds. And let me save this somewhere so I can clear it up and when the component is destroyed. So we've actually need to implement this, right? So let's just do this now. So let's just log stuff for now. So you can see that this thing is getting logged here. It just keeps running for every 20 milliseconds. So we can probably just try moving the circle for now. Okay. So what we can do is instead of just hard coding the stuff here, we can just say this dot rocks can be an array, and you can have excess this dot width by 2 and yes this dot height by 2. By the way, guys, if I make any typos, please tell me. Okay. $24. Oh yeah, sorry. Thanks. And here I can do this dot rocks dot for each rock. I can again get the context because I've saved it here. And I can just do context.r rock.x, rock.y. And let's just stroke it again. Okay, so what is happening is I'm actually not changing anything, so it just keeps drawing on the same point again and again. So let's change the coordinate here every 20 seconds. So it moves, right? But this is not how balls move. They don't leave traces like this. So let's clean it up for now. So what we can do is we can probably clear the entire screen every time this thing runs. So I'm going to clear from 0, 0 to this dot, then this dot height. And just going to make everything a fresh painting thing. So yeah, moose. So what I'm doing in this clear rectangle is basically the top left is 0, 0. The bottom right is this dot width, this dot height. So unlike your normal graphs, here the x-axis goes positive towards your right, and the y rather goes down instead of going up. So that's the only difference basically. So we now have a ball moving, right? The thing is, like, I told it will be an interactive demo, right? So what I can do is, instead of just doing everything in my end, I can probably have another page or a view where you guys can participate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a query param here. And I'm just going to call it Siva. And in my application HBase, I'm going to just pass it here. I'm going to say at Siva is equal to this dot Siva. And I'm just going to wrap all this in a if check. So normally in your classic apps, you'll just do this, right? It should work. But here, if it's an argument, you're supposed to prefix it with an at symbol. So you indicate that it's an argument. On else, I'm just gonna put an empty div. So yeah, you just get the text, and if there's a query param, I see this thing. Okay. Instead of just drawing one ball, let's make it so that every time somebody other than me visits this page, we insert one ball. So again, we'll just go for this insert element. Let's just say this dot emit ad rock, because I'm going to emit an event to my mission. So again, this is also going to be an action because I'm going to use a lot of this thing. And I also want to make sure, I have a reference to this rock somewhere. So I'm just going to say this dot rock ID is going to be date.now. I want some unique identifier. I think date.now is unique enough for our use case. And I'm going, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just use this socket thing. And yeah. And here I'm just going to emit an add rock event. And instead of sending the hello thing, I'm just going to send the rock ID. But we need to handle this thing somewhere, right? So what we can do is in the server, I'm just saying add rock. I'm just sending the rock added event again. So we need to start listening to this now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this code. And in this initialize thing, I'm just going to say this dot socket handler dot socket dot on rock added. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have another method called add rock. And since I don't want to end up in Vivek's talk as an example of how not to introduce memory leaks, I'm just going to turn this off here. Okay. And I actually think I forgot to inject the service. So inject that. So another thing here is I can also do this. And I can start accessing the service as AST. But let's just stick to this for now. So yeah, let's go ahead and implement this add rock method. So this is going to get an ID as a param. So I'm just going to do this dot rocks dot push. X is going to be say 100, like 100 pixels from the left side of the screen, and Y can just be any random position along the height. So I'm just going to say random from range 1, and let's also have the ID here. Sorry. Oh, thanks. Okay, so let's see if it works. Let's open another window. Let's get rid of this for now. If I enter it, so on every refresh, you're actually seeing another new ball adding. It's kind of good. So you can't just have balls flying, right? Let's try and control the balls for now. So I'm just going to add some buttons, just trivial stuff. I'm just going to add up and down. And in classic apps, you would have just done action something, right? But the recommended way to do this in Octane edition is just to say on click. So this can be any event, and you can just say this dot emit move rock. But I need to know which direction to move it in, right? So I need to pass the direction. So to pass some argument, you need to make use of this FN helper. So what this will do is in emit move rock, I'll actually get the direction here. So let me emit the same thing, and instead of add rock, I'll just emit move rock, and instead of yeah, I'll have the direction here. I also need to tell which rock to move, right? And by the way, like I know I'm doing too many things in this component, and it's not clean coding practice. So, but yeah, for the sake of this talk, let's just do this. And we need to listen to this thing here, and here we are just emitting a rock mode event as the reply. So let's listen to that also. So instead of add rock, I'll just have rock mode, and let's stop listening to that when everything is done. So what we can do here is can have another, and may not actually be an action. So this will actually get the ID and the direction as params in an object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let rock to move as this dot rocks dot find, where rock dot ID is equal to this ID. So it will just tell me which rock I'm moving, and if the direction is up, I'm going to do rock dot move dot x y. I'm just going to decrement it by 20 pixels. Otherwise, I'm just going to say to increment this by 20 pixels. So I'm incrementing one up because, like I said, the y-axis is kind of inverted here. Okay, let's see if it works. I'll just refresh this. So yeah, it's going up and down. Can you see that? I'll probably even slow this down a bit because it seems too fast. Let's do it for 15. So yeah. So this works. So these are all rocks, right? What do we do with rocks? We break them. So let's try and do that now. So what I'm going to do is on mouse move, I'm going to have a spaceship move. I'm going to say this dot move ship because spaceship is too hard to type. And action spaceship. So the thing is, like I said, this on thing, it actually sends you the event here. And events have the mouse coordinates, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this dot ship here, and x can be, I'm going to place this on the right end of the screen. So it's going to be this dot with minus 300 so that it's not hugging the screen. And I'm just going to initialize this at the middle of the screen. Okay. And whenever the mouse is moved, I'm just going to do this dot ship dot y as event dot client y. And I'm going to do something disgusting, and I'm going to do this dot repaint ship inside repaint rocks. Again, not very good coding standards, but let's just do this for now. And what this will do is it will again just say I'm just going to take the context, and it's really hard to type while standing, man. And this, and I'm just going to say context dot arc ship dot x and ship dot y. I'm just going to use the same radius, and again I'm going to draw a full circle, and let's actually draw this on the screen. Let's see if it works. Okay, it does something, but yeah, this is not how a ship is supposed to be. So let's just create a new path basically. So yeah, kind of moves. But right now the rocks just go through the spaceship, which is kind of, it doesn't make sense. So what I'm going to do is, how many of you here remember the Pythagoras theorem? Okay, can somebody tell it? My fingers are paining from typing, so I'm going to take a break. Tell me. Sorry? Yeah, it's basically a square plus b square is equal to c square. How many of you know the formula for finding the distance between 2 points? Yes. Yeah, it's again like standard 6th or 7th standard mathematics, but yeah. So I've just added a formula here, like it's already there. It's basically root of x2 minus x1 the whole square plus y2 minus y1 the whole square. So what we are going to do is, for each rock, I'm going to see if the rocks have actually, I mean, if the rock and the spaceship have touched each other. So how I can do it is, basically both are circles, right? If they are touching on the circumference, or if it's inside, the distance between the two centers is going to be less than twice the radius. Correct? So I'm just going to do if have touched rock, comma, this dot ship, comma, I'm also going to pass the radius. Then what I'll do is I'll just set a property on the rock. I'll just make it false. Yeah, I also have a beep method. It just makes a beep sound. And yeah, let's just call it for now. And again, while adding the rocks, let me just add the property is true by default. So, it's initially visible. Let's remove this default rock thing. Let's test this out. Just give me a minute, guys. Tab problems. So yeah, it's actually not getting. So yeah, that's because I need to do this entire thing only if this is true. Let's take this. So gone. So otherwise it just goes all the way to the end of the screen. It's kind of good. It kind of works, but it's too lame, right? So let's make this a bit beautiful. So I'm just gonna add some classes here. Just gonna call this controls, and I'm gonna call this, let's just say space, because you have rocks in space, ships in space. And I'm going to do something ugly here. Do not do this anywhere. So what this does is, it just adds two image tags, and it just sets the display to none. This is because I couldn't figure out a way to do this decently, and I just thought, yeah, let's just do this. And so if you notice here, if you pass the argument, for a dead insert modifier, you actually get the element here, and the rest of the arguments come in the array. I mean, it comes as an array. So I'm just sending one argument. So I'm just going to take it from here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to say this dot image name as element, and wherever wherever I've repainted this thing, I'm just going to say context dot draw image. This is a ship, right? So I'm going to call this dot player, because there is a player image, and I'm going to draw it in the same location that we were actually drawing the circles in. And where is repaint rocks? Yeah. So here also I'm going to do the same thing. Instead of ship, I'm going to do rock. So, oh, this has to be rock. I named it meteor. Nice. Cool. Okay. So let's all play this game. But before that, let's have a track of the scores so that we see who is winning. I just commented on all this because I was worried that I'll be overtime. So let's copy paste this thing here. Okay, let's add some initial scores. I'm just going to set this dot audience as 0. And yeah, this dot Siva is going to be 0. And wherever I've done this, I'm just going to say this dot Siva plus plus. And how do I increase the audience scores? Okay. So what I can do is, if rock.x, which is how far away it is from the screen, if it is greater than or equal to the width of the screen itself, it actually means that it's out of the screen and I didn't touch him, right? So I can do rock dot is visible as false, and I can say this dot audience plus plus. Let's also make a beep sound here. Okay, I actually need to do this thing. Oh. So what is happening here? Let me just put it on mute for now. So yeah, I know why this is happening. So this also has to be inside here. So now, so 1 point for you. And if I refresh this, yeah, so this actually works. So you guys can actually open this URL on your phones. You should be connected to the events Wi-Fi. I think the password is connect1. So if you open 192.168.16.212:7070, just have it ready. When I say, just click enter, because otherwise you guys will be winning all the time. People ready? Yeah, you can use up and down to escape from me, but okay, that was fast. Somebody just reloading the page like okay, this is actually the first time I'm trying out with so many people. Like I think yesterday we just tried out with Vivek, so this thing actually works. So nice. So yeah, that's kind of the end of my talk. But there is actually one more thing. I'm not sure how many of you realize this, but yeah, this entire talk is actually a real-time Ember application. So I'm actually controlling the slides with my phone. I've actually kind of open sourced this. It's on GitHub. I just made it public today. So if anybody wants to use it, you can just fork and use it. The whole purpose of this talk was to just show you that you can do all this in Ember. Yeah, if you want to try, just fork it out, just add slides as the components. And if you have actually seen my Twitter handle, I think I posted some time back about writing your Ember components as Markdown. The whole point of that was to use it here. So basically all my slides were written in Markdown. I can just write stuff. This is how you can just, you can have speaker notes and stuff. You can control it with the arrows here. There is also a next slide, previous slide thing, which there's also a timer here that you. So yeah.